It doesn't yell or scream. Instead, it smiles quietly. It doesn't storm through cities with destruction, but it grabs your hand, nods along calmly, and seeps into your mind without a sound. I'm talking about stupidity, but not just any kind of stupidity. This is weaponized stupidity, a kind of mind virus. It doesn't just mean lacking intelligence. It's something far more dangerous. It's the thing that turns clear thinking into confusion, careful thought into automatic reactions, and awareness into blind obedience. What makes it so sneaky is that it hides behind confidence, certainty, and the illusion of truth. You won't spot it easily because it's not just in people who haven't studied or learned. No, it spreads among professors, doctors, leaders, the people we trust the most. These were folks who used to question everything but now just repeat phrases they barely understand themselves. This isn't some joke or rant, it's real. At any moment, a sharp, questioning mind can become colonized with this virus. Picture this: a brilliant scientist who once debunked crazy ideas suddenly starts defending them. Or a kindly teacher who believes in unity begins spreading division. A loving parent tells lies that could harm their own kids. These aren't bad people at heart, they're infected without even knowing it, and that's the worst part. Because this kind of stupidity doesn't look stupid, it looks totally normal. It smiles politely, says all the right things, and waits silently until it takes over. And here's the scary thing: this isn't happening to them. It's happening right now, to us, to you, to me. What if the biggest threat to humanity isn't war or hatred, but just everyday people who have stopped thinking for themselves? One man saw this coming. He watched his society change not through bombs or riots, but through a slow decay of clear thinking. Locked away in a prison cell, waiting to be executed, he wrote a warning so chilling that for a long time, hardly anyone remembered it. And now, it's more relevant than ever. So the real question is, what if you're already infected? This mind virus doesn't kick down doors. It slips in quietly, through the tiniest cracks. You don't hear it coming because it doesn't rush in all at once. It's more like a fog that slowly creeps in, soft, silent, and completely unsuspected, until one day, everything you think feels familiar, but almost nothing inside is really yours. Imagine waking up in your apartment. It's the same place, the same morning routine. You brush your teeth, check the headlines, scroll through your social media feeds, but something feels off, not loud or obvious, just a little off. The thoughts in your mind begin to feel like they're on a script. The opinions you share aren't questioned, they're just repeated. You nod along during conversations, but not because you truly agree. You don't even know why you're agreeing. You think you're still thinking for yourself, but in reality, your thinking has been slowly handed over to the crowd, drip by drip. This is the invisible takeover. No brainwashing or violence, just 1,000 tiny compromises piled on top of each other, until your thoughts don't belong to you anymore. How does it begin? Not with outright stupidity, but with fear. Fear of standing out, fear of being seen as difficult, fear of being wrong. So instead of challenging what you hear, you conform, not because you believe it, but because you want to belong. You repeat slogans without understanding them because they feel safe. You share outrage even when you're not sure you feel it, just because it's expected. You believe things not because they're true, but because they're repeated over and over, and bit by bit, your brain, which is built to survive, starts to conserve energy. Why wrestle with complex ideas when you can settle for easy certainty handed to you? That's where stupid behavior really takes root, not as ignorance, but as emotional surrender. See, we usually think of stupidity as failing to be smart. But what if it's worse than that? What if stupidity is actually a failure of will? A quiet decision not to question or struggle anymore. This isn't simple ignorance. It's what I'd call functional stupidity, or high IQ obedience. It's polite insanity. It's the teacher who knows better but stays silent. It's the executive who senses something's wrong but signs off anyway. It's the citizen who senses a disconnect but just scrolls right past it. None of these people feel stupid. They feel safe, and that safety is the virus's biggest weapon, because it spreads when people stop thinking, not with loud arguments or protests, but with quiet compliance. When enough minds surrender to this, the world starts to rot from the inside out, not with fire, but with comfort. All this was exactly what the man in that prison cell named Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw in Nazi Germany. He wasn't a famous philosopher or professor. He was an ordinary man, imprisoned, awaiting execution. His country was collapsing, not from bombs, but from a slow death of the mind. Bonhoeffer came from a family of highly educated people, psychiatrists, scientists, artists, thinkers. He believed firmly that reason, debate, and dialogue could hold society together. But what he actually saw horrified him. A nation of poets, philosophers, theologians handed itself over to a maniac. The truly shocking part wasn't the evil itself, it was the compliance. He saw bishops blessing hatred, scholars rationalizing murder, neighbors turning into informants not out of evil, but because they had stopped thinking. Bonhoeffer chose to resist. He spoke out and plotted against Hitler. For that, he was locked away. But it wasn't the prison bars that troubled him most. It was what he saw in people's minds. Something darker than fear or ignorance. Something like a spiritual surrender, whispered as common sense. An infection that destroys the soul. In letters from that prison, Bonhoeffer wrote words that now shake us across decades. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Not against evil, but stupidity. Because evil knows it's evil. Evil hides, lies, and disguises itself. But stupidity believes, it trusts, it obeys. Not because it has to, but because it simply surrendered the ability not to. Bonhoeffer wasn't scared of loud hate. He feared silent agreement more. He realized the most dangerous person isn't the one who hates you, it's the one who no longer thinks. Behind the physical walls of that prison, without freedom, he witnessed the deepest form of captivity, mental slavery, spiritual laziness, the death of thought. And that's why he wrote not as a scholar, but as a witness, a prophet shouting into a void, hoping that someday someone would listen. He didn't die for politics, he died for truth, for the right to think, question, and refuse to obey blindly. Now his warning is more urgent than ever before, because stupidity isn't just old news, it's evolving. It doesn't announce itself with sirens or screams. It creeps in so quietly you barely notice until it's already too late. So, we left off with Dietrich Bonhoeffer locked up in his prison cell, quietly observing the collapse of everything he valued: reason, faith, and human dignity. But what exactly was he doing there? Why was this man, a theologian and thinker, from a respected family, thrown into the darkest depths of Nazi Germany's prisons and eventually executed? Bonhoeffer wasn't just a bystander. He was part of the resistance against Hitler's regime, working behind the scenes to fight the slow suffocation of freedom and truth. Through his connections, he helped communicate plans to overthrow Hitler. To the Allies, he also played a role in efforts to rescue Jews from the Holocaust by supplying them with false papers. This was dangerous work, done with utmost secrecy. Eventually, in April 1943, the Gestapo arrested Bonhoeffer and others involved in these secret operations. He spent 2 years in prison without trial, enduring harsh conditions, but remaining mentally strong. During this time, he wrote letters, essays, and poems, words born from the sharp pain of watching his country descend into darkness. His writings reveal how deeply he understood the danger not only of overt evil, but of the quiet, insidious surrender to stupidity and blind obedience. What makes Bonhoeffer's insight so chilling is this: he warned that stupidity is more dangerous than malice. Malice, hatred, and evil can be confronted and opposed. It has a face, a motive, and, importantly, a weakness. But stupidity, the stupid person, is self-satisfied, oblivious, and stubborn. They dismiss facts that contradict their beliefs without hesitation. Reasoning with them is often impossible because they are not interested in truth. They are interested in comfort and certainty. And unlike evil, stupidity doesn't feel any guilt or unease. It simply obeys and spreads quietly. Bonhoeffer wrote, "Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests nor force can overcome it. Facts fall on deaf ears because the infected mind pushes away anything that challenges its preconceptions. And this kind of dysfunction, this silent, pervasive surrender, is what allowed terrible atrocities to unfold with the compliance of so many." In his prison letters, Bonhoeffer described how this mental surrender felt like a spiritual surrenderer, decay of the soul, clothed as common sense. It is the willingness to accept lies and injustice, because thinking or questioning feels too risky or uncomfortable. When the July 20th, 1944, attempt to assassinate Hitler failed, the Nazi regime cracked down even harder on resistance members. Like Bonhoeffer, he was moved to the notorious Gestapo prison and later shipped between different concentration camps. On April 9, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender, he was executed at Flossenbürg concentration camp, alongside other conspirators. His last moments were marked by remarkable courage. Reportedly, his final words were, "This is the end for me, the beginning of life." He was not speaking of mere biological survival. He meant the life that begins when the mind and soul are freed from chains, when thought becomes sacred again. Did not die simply for opposing a tyrant. He died defending the right to think, question, and disobey when obedience meant destroying truth and humanity itself. Today, his warning rings louder than ever, because the old enemy stupidity is still with us. But it has evolved. It no longer looks like ignorance or simple lack of intelligence. It hides behind the masks of activism, certainty, and confidence. It spreads at lightning speed through social media algorithms that reward outrage, simplicity, and tribal thinking more than complexity or reflection. The epidemic of functional stupidity, obedience without thought, now wears new clothes. It looks like you or me sharing a post without reading deeply, arguing without listening, or reacting without pausing. It's the comfortable surrender to easy answers, the refusal to wrestle with uncertainty, and the retreat from curiosity. Bonhoeffer saw the first signs of this collapse in his time, a culture shifting from debate to echo, from questioning to uniform slogans. He warned us what happens when minds stop being free. The society rots, not with fire or bombs, but from comfort, conformity, and silence. So, what can you do? First, recognize the signs of infection, not in others, but in yourself. Do you feel revulsion toward complexity? Do you mock doubt and nuanced as weakness? Do you share ideas more for approval than truth? These are the warning bells. Secondly, fight for your own mind. Stop outsourcing your thinking. Pause before you share. Question your beliefs, even the ones that feel most certain. Thirdly, remember that true thinking is a quiet rebellion. It's saying, "I don't know," when everyone wants certainty. It's sitting with discomfort instead of fleeing to easy answers. It's the courage to doubt your tribe and still stand firm. Dietrich Bonhoeffer did not just warn us, he showed us how to resist with thought, faith, and sacrifice. And his legacy is a beacon for anyone ready to defend the sacred right to think in a world designed to stop it. Alright, so far we've explored how Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw the creeping threat of stupidity, not the kind that makes you laugh, but the dangerous kind that quietly takes over minds and spreads like a virus. Now, let's dive deeper into how this mind virus actually infects us and what its signs really look like in everyday life. First off, this mind virus doesn't attack with loud alarms or obvious dangers. It creeps in silently through small cracks, fears, desires to fit in, the avoidance of discomfort. It doesn't care about facts or logic, but thrives on emotional surrender, comfort, and certainty. The moment you stop wrestling with difficult questions and start repeating phrases without thinking, that's when you can start to feel its pull. One of the key early symptoms is revulsion toward complexity. You know that feeling when someone says, "It's complicated," or "There's nuance," and instead of being curious, you get impatient or irritated. That's a red flag. Infected minds dislike ambiguity because nuance makes them uncomfortable. They want the world to be neat, black or white, heroes or villains, right or wrong. No middle ground allowed. Nuance requires effort and mental energy, two things the virus tries to conserve by pushing you towards simple certainty. Over time, your brain doesn't want to think anymore. It settles for easy answers, even if they're wrong. The virus feeds on this energy-saving. Next, you start avoiding conversations that challenge your beliefs. Instead of exploring evidence or listening carefully, you get defensive. You shut down questions with dismissals or labels like conspiracy theory or fake news. Why? Because letting doubt in feels like losing a part of yourself. Your beliefs become more than ideas. They feel like your identity, and giving them up, that feels like death. This kind of emotional fragility is the fuel the virus runs on. It rewrites your most basic survival instinct into a lie. If I'm wrong, I'm worthless. That's why you cling so tightly to your opinions, no matter what. Imagine this scenario. You post an opinion online. It gets likes, shares, and validation. Feels good, right, encouraging. Then you double down with a stronger version, more likes, better feelings. Eventually, you're no longer engaging with ideas, you're chasing applause. Your thoughts become optimized for approval. not truth. Your voice becomes a hollow echo chamber, bouncing back what you've heard without adding anything new. And if someone asks you to explain what you really mean, you panic, because you realize you only know the script, not the substance. That's where language starts losing meaning. You repeat slogans, sound bites, catchphrases, but the original thought is gone. You might feel smart, confident even, but inside, you're disconnected from real reflection. When this reaches a critical point, you seal yourself off. You stop asking questions because you already know. Dissent becomes an enemy, curiosity a threat. If you're challenged, you don't debate, you label, mock, and demonize. Dialogue isn't just difficult, it's impossible. That's the final stage of infection. A fortress mind, protected by the illusion of truth and certainty, guarded by your own ego. A mind convinced it's right, without ever thinking critically. Now the tough question: which of these signs do you see in yourself? Because here's the brutal truth. This isn't about other people being stupid. The virus spreads through comfort. It hides inside certainty, conformity, and the safety of belonging. Evil sneaks, hides, and lies because it knows it's wrong. Stupidity, it shows up smiling and following the rules, believing it's doing good even as it destroys. Think about the police officer who enforces unjust orders without questioning them, the bureaucrat who stamps death sentences without reading the documents, the citizen who cheers injustice not out of hate, but out of blind obedience. Bonhoeffer understood this perfectly when he said, "Evil carries within itself the seed of its own destruction, but against stupidity we are defenseless." You can challenge evil with truth and conscience. Stupidity, it just shrugs and gets louder. Worse, stupidity has no conscience, not because it's cold, but because it's asleep. The virus can infect kind, loving, generous people and turn them into unwitting agents of destruction. This isn't an insult, it's a warning. Nowadays, this mind virus has evolved. It no longer spreads slowly, one person at a time. It spreads at the speed of a scroll, engineered by technology, designed for mass adoption. Welcome to the age of algorithmic ignorance. Social media platforms don't need to lie or suppress ideas anymore. They just overwhelm you with all the noise you already agree with, louder, faster, angrier, until your own reflection is the only voice you hear. You think you're informed, but you're really just conditioned to feel, to react, and to obey emotions instead of questioning assumptions. Here's the scary part. It works. Algorithms reward outrage, certainty, and simplicity because they keep you hooked. The more time you spend in that echo chamber, the less you question the world beyond it. This modern mutation of stupidity looks like activism, certainty, and confidence, but it isn't really thinking. It's a machine thinking for you, fueling your biases, knowing exactly what buttons to push to keep you scrolling and sharing. Worse, these systems learn faster than we do. They adapt to your triggers, shape your fears, and feed your addiction to being right. You don't realize it's happening because it feels like strength, but it's actually simulation. This is where true resistance begins. You have to catch yourself when your brain shuts down. Doubt with phrases like, "I already checked," or "that source isn't credible," or "everyone else believes this, so it must be true." Each time you do that, your mind becomes harder and harder to reach. Righteousness replaces nuance. Disagreement turns into offense. Then, you stop listening. At that moment, your mind is no longer your own. You speak their slogans, think their thoughts, react on their triggers. You might still use your voice, but it's not really you behind it. The real war isn't about facts, it's about your relationship with truth itself. Because stupidity is more than misinformation. It's a broken identity that convinces you your beliefs are inseparable from who you are. Letting go feels like betrayal, and that's the final trap. The virus guards itself with your ego, so the real question becomes, are you brave enough to doubt yourself? This war isn't won in rallies or debates. It's fought quietly, alone, in the space between what you believe and the voice inside that says, "What if I'm wrong?" That moment, quiet, cold, and unexpected, is when the fog clears a little and the real thinking begins. You weren't stupid the whole time. You were performing, pleasing, nodding, not because you're dumb, but because the person you feared disappointing was yourself, your tribe, or that endless algorithm feeding you comfort. Most people never take this test. They choose to stay in the cage, justified by habit, guilt, or fear. but a few choose otherwise. They step out, they question, they refuse to surrender. That's you now. You don't need permission to grow, doubt, speak, or think freely. You don't have to sacrifice yourself on the altar of comfort and certainty, because a truth that demands obedience isn't really truth. It's control. And this is exactly what Bonhoeffer saw, not in theory, but with his own eyes. He watched a nation collapse not from bombs or bullets but from minds, voluntarily surrendering themselves in exchange for peace, simplicity, and belonging. He didn't just warn, he resisted, he questioned, he refused, even when it cost him everything. On April 9, 1945, just weeks before the end of the war, Bonhoeffer was executed. A theologian, a rebel, a thinker. His last words, "This is the end for me, the beginning of life, not biological life, a life when the mind is no longer chained, when thought becomes sacred again. That life is yours to choose. But remember, thinking is no longer just intellectual, it's a psychological rebellion, a spiritual defiance. In a world made to sedate you, spoon-feed pre-approved thoughts, punish discomfort and reward conformity, simply pausing, questioning, and saying, 'I don't know,' becomes an act of revolution. So, the real question now isn't theoretical, it's personal. Will you guard your mind, or will you surrender it, smiling, nodding, scrolling, while believing you're still free? If this makes you uncomfortable, good. That's where real thinking begins, not in agreement, but in doubt. Bonhoeffer didn't die to be quoted. He died so we'd wake up, so we'd question not just the world, but ourselves. And if you're still here watching, it means something. You're one of the few who refuses to let their mind be colonized by noise. So here's what you can do next. Keep thinking, keep questioning, and never give your mind away for free. So far, we've unpacked a lot about this mind virus, how it sneaks in quietly, disguised as comfort and certainty, how it slowly steals your ability to think for yourself without you even noticing. Now, let's talk about what fighting back actually looks like, because awareness alone isn't enough. The resistance is personal, daily, and yes, sometimes really hard. First, reclaim your curiosity. The virus loves when you settle, when you close off questions and settle for the easiest answers. So make the habit of asking why like it's your favorite game. When you hear something that sounds too simple or too sure, dig deeper. Don't just accept it because it fits your worldview or because everyone else says it's true. Curiosity is your mental immune system. It keeps your mind flexible and alive. Without it, your brain becomes lazy, and the virus creeps in on its heels. Second, embrace uncertainty. This is tough because uncertainty feels like discomfort, and we're programmed, myself included, avoid discomfort whenever possible. But remember, real thinking happens in the tension of not knowing. That in-between space where you feel your assumptions cracking open. That's where growth lives. When you catch yourself needing to always be right, pause. Being right might feel good, but it can also chain your mind to old beliefs. Choosing to be okay with not having all the answers. That's real courage. Third, practice active listening. This means really trying to hear what others are saying, especially when they challenge you or think differently. Instead of crafting a fast response, or dismissing their ideas, try to understand the reasoning behind them. This is hard in a world built for quick reactions and instant takes, but it's essential. Listening well doesn't mean giving up your beliefs. It means strengthening them by testing them against real, thoughtful opposition, not the shallow kind designed to score points, but the kind rooted in honest curiosity. Fourth, slow down your information diet. The virus thrives on speed and volume. The endless scroll, the constant updates, the flood of opinions all create mental overload. When you're overwhelmed, your brain defaults to easy tribal thinking. Take breaks from social media. Read deeper texts, long-form articles, books that challenge your assumptions rather than just affirm them. Try consuming content that stretches your understanding instead of just confirming what you already know. Fifth, be mindful of your emotions, especially fear and anger. The virus often sneaks in during emotionally charged moments. Fear of social rejection, anger at perceived enemies. These feelings cloud judgment and make it easier to surrender thinking. When you feel swept up in outrage or fear, recognize it as a trigger. Step back, breathe, and ask yourself, am I reacting or am I reasoning? Emotional awareness is a superpower against manipulation. Sixth, cultivate humility. This goes hand in hand with embracing uncertainty. Humility reminds you that knowing less than you think is okay. It invites you to learn, to change your mind, and to consider that the world is wider and more complex than your current beliefs. Humility breaks the ego's grip, which the virus uses as armor. When ego steps back, curiosity and learning can step forward. Finally, connect face to face. Online spaces are often designed to divide and simplify. Real human connection, stories, and conversations slow down thinking enough to penetrate the fog. Seek out people who challenge you kindly, who make you question and laugh and reflect. These interactions remind you that thinking isn't a solo act, it's a shared, messy, beautiful process. Look, this is a fight without a finish line, because the virus evolves, takes new forms, and new technologies may bring new challenges. But every time you choose thinking over comfort, doubt over certainty, dialogue over silence, you're resisting. You're part of something bigger, a living tradition of questioning minds going back centuries. Dietrich Bonhoeffer is one name in a long line of thinkers and rebels who refused to let their minds be taken. They knew the cost, sometimes everything, but they also knew the prize: freedom of thought, the courage to say no to lies, the power to keep humanity's soul alive. So where do you go from here? Start small, protect your mental space. Notice when you're slipping into autopilot or parroting slogans. Ask yourself what you really think and why. Don't be afraid to say, "I don't know." Don't be afraid to be wrong. These are signs, not of weakness, but of strength. And remember, the fight is not about winning arguments or convincing others overnight. It's about keeping your own mind free so one day you can help others find freedom too. If this message has resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it, because the more minds awake, the harder it is for this virus to spread. We've come a long way, uncovering how this quiet, infectious stupidity threatens not just societies, but each of us personally, how it sneaks in disguised as comfort, certainty, and the simple desire to belong. And now, as we reach the final part, let's get real about what you can do to resist this mind virus, reclaim your freedom, and be a part of the antidote. First, let's get clear. This isn't about calling people stupid or judgment. This is about understanding a very human vulnerability. Our brains naturally crave safety and certainty because they evolved to survive, not to question endlessly. The problem is, when that desire to feel safe shuts down thinking, curiosity, and doubt, that's the moment the virus moves in. So how do you fight that? How do you keep your mind yours in a world built to take it? It starts with intention. You have to decide every day to guard your mind as fiercely as you guard your physical health. You wash your hands to stop physical germs. Treat your mind the same way. Be mindful about what enters it, where you focus, and how you respond. The second step is to slow down. In an age of relentless information bombardment and the dopamine hit of likes and shares, slow thinking is revolutionary. It means pausing before you react or pass judgment. It means not floating on the surface of things, but diving deeper into ideas even if it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. The third step is to embrace the power of being wrong. Our culture often treats being wrong like failure or shame. But one of the most courageous and powerful things you can do is to admit uncertainty or mistakes. That's where learning happens. That's how you break free from the echo chamber and the trap of automated beliefs. Fourth, have real conversations, ones that stretch your mind. This might mean listening more than speaking, asking more questions than giving answers, being curious about other perspectives without immediately debating them. Not every disagreement has to be a fight. Sometimes it's an opportunity to grow. And you know what? You don't have to agree with everything or every person to grow from the exchange. Growth doesn't mean surrender. It means allowing your mind to expand. Fifth, commit to lifelong learning. The virus hates curiosity and growth. So push back by constantly feeding your mind with new and challenging ideas. Read books outside your usual genres. Follow voices you don't usually hear. Learn about cultures and experiences unlike your own. Stretch your mental and emotional muscles. Finally, take care of your mental well-being. It's harder to resist manipulation when you're stressed, tired, or overwhelmed. Make space for rest, reflection, and practices that calm your mind, whether that's meditation, journaling, nature walks, or whatever works for you. When your mind is strong and balanced, it's harder to fall prey to the virus. Remember, Resisting this virus isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing daily practice of vigilance and courage. And here's the good news. You're not alone in this fight. Millions around the world are waking up, questioning their own assumptions, and standing against the tide of mindless obedience. Each mind freed strengthens the entire human community. Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Life and Death remind us that the cost of surrendering thought can be devastating, but the cost of defending it is worth everything. Your mind is a sacred space. Protect it fiercely. When the noise blares and the world seems overwhelming, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this really mine? Is this what I truly think? Or am I just nodding along? That simple question can be your shield. It's not easy. It never was. But real freedom, true freedom, comes only when you refuse to hand over your mind. So this is where the journey begins for you. Choose to be awake. Choose to question. Choose to think deeply, wildly, and bravely. And if this message has moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you care about, because every awakening mind is a light piercing through the fog. Thank you for listening, for questioning, and for standing with courage. Stay sharp, stay curious, and above all, keep your mind fiercely yours, because in the end, that's where true freedom lives.